It is time for another episode of the Cultural Hall. It is a temple ticker, which means, oh, well, you know what it means. We're joined by the Pharaoh himself. It's Corey K. Ward. Corey, I swear it's been an entire year since I've seen you last. How are you?
Yeah, it's been a long time. Doing
Yeah.
really well.
I'm glad that you are able to be here and join us again. For people, if this is your first time, we used to have Corey be a part of our articles of news episodes, and then we decided, well, heck, we got 300 plus temples in the works. We can't cram it in to a small segment. So he graduated, he got his own segment, and that is what the temple ticker is. So it's all things temple in this episode. Did you get anything temple related for Christmas?
I can't say I have.
Okay. I found my old temple bag. If you follow us on Instagram, I'll share a picture of my temple bag. It is the greatest temple clothes bag. In fact, that sounds like hyperbole, but I mean it. If you have a better looking temple bag than the one I got, I would love to see it. So there, now we've been able to make a competition out of the very lamest thing that we ever could, the temple bag that you could do. All right, so tell us, where are we going? Where take us in the history machine? Where are we going for this temple ticker today?
Well, I think we last spoke probably the 1st of December. So
Mm-hmm.
December was a rather busy week or month for temple stuff. There was one rededication. That was the St. George Utah Temple. I know that you touched a little bit on this in your articles of news. But yeah, President Jeffery Holland rededicated that temple on December 10th. He was joined by his son, Matthew Holland, and then the presiding bishop was there, Gerald, Causse, and a couple other 70s. And so, yeah, it was really special for President Holland. He said that what I found really special was that he basically said that all his living ordinances have been done in this temple.
Mm.
He was he was baptized in the baptismal font because back then in St. George, there's only one baptismal font in the whole town, and that was in the temple.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where all the 8-year-olds got baptized. And then, of course, later he was endowed there and then sealed to his late wife, Patricia Holland.
Yeah, a couple of things that are sort of interesting about that is the fact that it was published, the dedicatory prayer published in the church news, which we don't do for other temples, or haven't done, I guess I should say.
Well, what if I were to tell you that actually every dedicatory prayer is published in the church news after the
Everyone
dedication?
is.
Everyone.
All of them are. I didn't know that. I didn't realize that.
Yeah, just the recent Okinawa, Japan temple. We saw that from Elder Stevenson. It's just a few days after the dedication, the church news puts it out. And
The
if
hold
you
on, hold on, hold on. The complete dedicatory prayer is
the
published, or it's
complete,
like, hey, and they said this, and here's the story about that. It's actually the whole complete transcription.
yeah, that's right. The church news
Okay,
has
well
them
then they're
all.
going to have to get something new than a church news, because pretty soon all we're going to have is a church news full of temple dedicatory prayers.
Well, if you go to churchofjesuschristtemples.org, they've collected all those parts from the church news, and if you go to any temple, you can look up its dedicatory prayer. And
Oh,
some
that's
have multiple
cool.
dedicatory prayers, like St. George. They actually has 3 now because it was dedicated first by Daniel H. Wells, and then in the 1975, it was dedicated by Spencer W. Kimball. And
Hmm.
now you have a third dedicatory prayer by Jeffrey R. Holland. So
Interesting. Which one's your favorite?
I can't say I went through and read them. I'm sorry.
I can't pick. They're all great for different reasons, like everyone was a kid. Okay, well here I got a little trivia question for you
Okay.
on Temple Square. When
Hmm.
people back in the day in the Salt Lake Valley would get baptized, in which building was there a baptismal font of the buildings on Temple Square? I mean,
Out back in the
obviously there
day.
is one in the Salt Lake Temple, but were people also baptized in the Salt Lake Temple baptismal font, or was the baptismal font somewhere else?
Well, there was the endowment house before the Salt Lake Temple, and it had a
Okay.
baptismal font.
Okay.
But I believe there's also one in the basement of the tabernacle, right?
There is, as a matter of fact. Isn't that cool?
That is cool.
I've never seen it. I've asked to see it because that was where my grandfather was baptized. They wouldn't
Uh,
let me. They would not
oh
let me.
no. I went down there once because I was volunteering for something, and they had a lunch down there, and it was just, where all the choir has changing rooms and stuff. So I bet there is a room down there that has one.
Yep. It was super cool. There was one guy in big long beard and a gray pointy hat, and I went to try and go into the baptismal font, and he stepped in front of me and put his hand like almost to my chest, and he said, "Thou shalt not pass." And then I couldn't get to where the baptismal font was. I was very sad. Very, very sad.
Interesting.
Yeah. I don't know how they got Gandalf. I digress. What else?
Well, I have another weird thing. For some reason, the Washington Times, which is a national newspaper, conservative newspaper, it published something about the St. George Temple. It just talked about how President Holland was quoted about saying that temple rituals are key to retaining young members.
Mm-hmm.
And something I found in the bottom of the article, which none of the other news sources quoted, is that Elder Holland once had a conversation with President Nelson, and basically he said, let's see, he said, "I remember once he said to me in a conversation, 'And when you sit in this chair, dot, dot, dot.'" And I said, "Excuse me, President, but I'm not sitting on that chair, and I won't be." And he leaned across the desk and said, "You will be sitting in this chair."
Wow.
So I don't know, that's some sort of cryptic prophecy about the lifespan of President Holland. Maybe he'll actually will become president of the church, unlike what most people are thinking nowadays.
Well, I mean, after his near-death experience, but then his sort of rise from nearly the grave, as Elder Rendland describes it, right? That it was
Yeah.
just miraculous recover. In order for Elder Holland to be the prophet, it would have to be Elder Nelson or President Nelson would pass and President Oaks.
Yeah, that's
and
right.
then it would be President Holland if that happened.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, so possible, I suppose. Elder Oaks seems a little vivacious to be able to not succeed for. Well, I don't know. Who knows? Speculation on life makes people uncomfortable.
He's 91 and a half, so you never know.
Yeah, let's do it. Why not? How about we get to some temple dedications? I like this.
Yeah. 3 temple dedications were announced for 2024. The first one will be the Urdaneta Philippines temple. And so it will be dedicated on April 28th, and President Oaks will be out in the Philippines doing that. He famously lived in Philippines for, I think, a couple of years, maybe less than that, when he was a younger apostle.
That was when the prophet said it was Elder Holland and Elder Oaks, where the prophet essentially was like, "We need development and older leadership. Go. Help us retain these people." And Elder Holland went south somewhere, right? South America.
He went to Chile, yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then Elder Oaks went to the Philippines. Okay.
Yeah, so they'll have an open house March 15th to the 30th. This will be the 3rd temple in the Philippines. However, there are 10 more planned for the country. And this temple was announced in 2010 by President Monson. And so it's going to take 13 years, 6 months to complete. So if we're looking at all the temples, how long they've taken from announcement to dedication, this will be the 5th longest. There's only 4 temples that have taken longer than the Urdaneta Philippines temple.
Why did it take so long?
I don't really know. I think it took a while to find a suitable site. I think they had to drain the swamp in that area to get it ready for the foundation of a temple. And then COVID hit right when construction started. And supply chain problems probably took a hit. And yeah, it just took a while for probably a lot of reasons. So if you're curious, the only ones that have taken longer are the Bogota, Colombia temple, the Guayaquil, Ecuador temple, the Los Angeles temple, which took 19 years and it was delayed by World War II, and then the Salt Lake temple, of course, which took 45 years from announcement to completion.
Which took forever. And I asked them how long it would take. Said forever. Yeah, that's crazy. And I'm glad that you knew exactly what the next question that I was going to ask you was, which the longer ones are. Take us to Puebla, Mexico.
Yeah, they're going to have a dedication on May 19th. Elder Gerald will be down there. They'll have an open house from March 29th to April 20th. This will be the 14th temple in Mexico, and 9 more are in the planning stages. So,
And then we get to Layton, Utah.
yeah, this will be dedicated on June 16th by Elder David Bednar. The open house will be April 19th to June 1st. And this will be actually the 20th in Utah. So there's a total of 28 that are in planning.
So Layton, that open house seems a little bit shorter to me. Saratoga Springs was like 3 months. That seems like half that.
Yes. The Orem Temple was about 6 weeks,
Okay.
and this one will be about 6 weeks too. So I think that will probably be the standard length of a Utah temple going forward.
Why was Saratoga so long? I mean, obviously we had hundreds of thousands of people go through, but what was so significant about Saratoga Springs that I mean, it's not closer. In fact, in many ways, Orem and Layton are far easier to get to. Why was that one such a bigger one? It's because bigger temple? What's the deal?
It was slightly larger. The people in the open house committee, I think, were quoted in just saying it was summertime. We just wanted an opportunity for people to travel and for high school kids out of on vacation to bring people. And I just think that area of Utah is a lot higher concentration of members of the church.
Mm-hmm.
So they probably knew there'd be a lot of demand. Because I think in Utah, the majority of people that go to a temple open house are members. So
Sure.
I think they just knew there'd be a lot of demand. And it had been like 5 years since the last open house in Utah. So now that they're like every few months, it's kind of like maybe there's a little bit of fatigue.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. That's an interesting problem for members of the church to have. Oh, that old temple. But still no word about when my Taylorsville temple is. Let's go
I
to
think it's up next for announcements. So
well,
any day.
maybe. Here's the thing that I'm thinking, old temple statistician and guesser of when things are. I'm saying Taylorsville 200. They're gonna Jimmy rig it so that Taylorsville is the 200th temple and that we get to celebrate that as such, which means we're going to be on pause a little bit depending on when the other ones are dedicated, but we're right close-ish.
Yeah, it'll be close. Like if they have a very long open house, that
Yeah.
could extend the dedication and maybe put it ahead of some other temples. So
But I
yeah.
can see them doing that because we want the 200th to be in the homeland where the saints traveled, and we'll do something recreated with hand carts or I don't know, something for the 200th. That's my hope. Fingers are crossed. Texas? Shall we go to Texas?
Yeah, a few temple sites were announced. The first one was the McKinney, Texas temple, which you may be thinking, I've never heard of that temple. Well, it's because in General Conference, a year and change ago, President Nelson announced it as the Prosper Texas Temple. And so, yeah, they announced it. You may think, oh, well, they're building it in McKinney. Well, no, they're actually building it in Fairview, Texas. So change the name to a place where it isn't there anyways. It's on Stacy Road at an 8-acre site. And it's right across the street from the boundary of Allen, Texas. So if you think maybe they would have picked a bigger city to name the temple after, like Allen's just right there.
Yeah.
But I guess McKinney. And I heard through a grapevine that perhaps some the mayors of both Prosper and Fairview kind of felt odd about that church's decision. So
well, because it is. Because it is odd. That's why they felt odd. Here, call it this temple in this town that isn't this town.
Yeah, and I understand it's like if it's the first temple in a metropolitan area, like if this was the first temple in the Dallas area, I'm sure they just call it the Dallas temple. Like that wouldn't be a big deal. But this is like a suburb of Dallas, and so now you're getting more specific. And McKinney's, it's a bit north there. It's it's its own city, but it's still kind of in that Dallas area. So it's interesting that that's what they chose. The temple will be probably 2 stories, 44,000 square feet. What's interesting about this is that it's probably going to be sandwiched between 2 other Christian churches. Right now, there's an LDS church. Well, it's going to be next to, but that one is next to another Christian church, and then the corner of the property that will be next to the future temple is said it's owned by the Twin Creeks Church of Christ. So they may be building a new church in the next few years. And what's funny about this is that I looked up this Twin Creeks Church of Christ, and they currently have a church that's in Allen,
Mhm.
and it's also next to an LDS chapel.
Interesting.
So I don't know if you can connect any conspiracies about perhaps how the church got this property, if it's maybe friends with this Twin Creeks church, if maybe
Mm.
they were considering Prosper, but then in last minute they chose to go to Fairview instead because, this is a great site. And so,
Now, what I've heard, and this also, we both appreciate the rumor mill, but what I've heard is that the Twin Creeks Church of Christ is exactly like the LDS Church, but they only ask for 8%. So they're just giving people
ooh.
options. So, hey, what do you think? We got 8% over here. And people go, oh, that's less money. That may not be
Nice.
true. That may not be a rumor at all. Yeah, that to me, I will forever not understand because back to your point, right? Like Dallas, if you're, Chicago is in another part of Chicago, the temple, and so you go, okay, I get it. It's a Chicago temple. But if it's actually in a city, a township, a place, I will never understand why we don't just call it that place. Or if we're going to just start making up names for where the temple is, then let's start coming up with some off the cuff, like Bodie McBoderson Temple in, Allen, Texas. Let's
Well,
do
they
things like
they
that.
had they had a temple in Yuba City, and that's what they announced it as. And then they're just like, we're just going to call it Feather River because
Our
because.
favorite expletive. Take us to Madagascar, won't you please?
Yeah, Antananarivo, Madagascar Temple. The church has announced a 10-acre site. This is a current site where there's two wards that meet in this meeting house. So it'll be interesting to see if they choose to build a temple next to this or if they choose to just replace the meeting house. But what's interesting is it's literally right next to the US Embassy in Madagascar. So yeah, can't be closer to America than that. It's gonna be 10,000 square feet, and it'll have a patron housing and arrival facilities. So one of those small Helena-sized temples in Madagascar.
Pretty cool. Madagascar is quickly becoming a place I want to go check out. So just a quick little temple and being able to go and do a session there, that'd be pretty cool. We go back to the Philippines.
Yeah, we got a temple site announced. This is actually the fourth temple announced in the Philippines, but was announced in 2018, and it's been really slow to see progress. It's the Cagayan de Oro Temple. And it's funny because this temple was announced before the Davao Philippines Temple, which is on the southern part of the island. So there's two temples announced for this island, and the Davao Temple, like in just a couple of years, started construction, and now it's probably a year or two out from completion.
Hmm.
Where this temple was announced before this, but it's just barely getting a site announced. So this was announced the same general conference as like the Richmond Temple and the Layton Temple and the Puebla Temple, and those are all
Okay.
like complete. And this is just barely getting a site. So it's going to be a 5-acre site. It's just down the road from the big shopping mall in the city, so I think most people will know where that is. If you look on the street view of the temple, the church is already back in September of 2022. They put up a sign that said private property, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, no trespassing. And it looks like they've already started like to clear out the land, make site preparation. So I'm not sure why the church waited for so long to announce this site, even though they've clearly owned it and have been sitting on it for a long time, preparing it for building. So, but yeah, I guess it is what it is.
I'd like it
It's
better if
gonna
the sign said, coming soon, ordinances for your dead loved ones. Come on, let's
yeah,
let's prop it up. Let's get
be a
let's
little
get
bit
the
more
media
friendly.
machine. Let's get the
I
media
know.
machine behind this thing. Come on.
It's going to be an 18,000 square foot temple, probably pretty similar to the one in Davao. So those could be twin temples.
Very cool. And now we go to England. Let's see if you say this right.
Uh, Birmingham, I don't
It's
know.
Birmingham. Will we go to
Birmingham.
Birmingham, England?
Yeah, the temple will be built on a 2.7-acre site in not quite Birmingham City, but in Royal Sutton Coldfield, I guess. It is the site currently where the Wild Green ward meets and where the Birmingham, England mission has offices. So I think anyone that's familiar with Birmingham will know where that is. It's also going to be about a 10,000 square foot temple. So this one's like small for the UK, considering that the other two temples in the UK are kind of large. And so this makes me believe that maybe there'll be more temples in the British Isles
Of
announced in the
course.
coming years.
Of course there will. We're trying to make it that much easier on people. So of course, let's give them a little. Do we know, with it being a 10,000 one, is this going to be a Lego temple?
Um, it's going to be that same design. I don't know. The church has only so far built two temples for modular designs, and the Cody, Wyoming temple is still sitting there with its blocks. And so the church hasn't expanded too much this program of modular temples yet. I find it hard to believe that they're gonna ship it over to England. So I bet this will probably be a traditional construction.
I like to say that we're in a holding pattern as that goes. That sounds very official when we talk about that. Let's do a couple renderings and then we'll take a quick break and then come back and hit out the rest of this stuff. Where are these renderings?
Yeah, we previously got site announced, and now we have renderings in Londrina, Brazil, and Ribeirão Preto, Brazil. And these will be twin temples for sure. Same design, same floor plan, same modern gray granite design, but just a slightly different steeple design. The one in Londrina has more of like a elongated steeple long, and the one in Ribeirão Preto has more of a tall tower with kind of a triangle pyramid on the top. And a little bit different designs in the windows and the carving of the granite and everything. And so definitely twin temple designs designed at the same time with some minor differences. And then
Bakersfield, something to go to Bakersfield for people that go from Salt Lake to Disneyland. Now you can stop and you can see a temple.
Yeah, this will be about the same size as the ones in Brazil. It'll be the same size as the ones like in Modesto and Yorba Linda. It's going to be a Spanish mission style colonial design, kind of a cream white with red terracotta roof. Looks, a lot in the style of like the McAllen, Texas temple, the Yorba Linda, the Fort Worth, the future Tampa temple. So we're seeing a lot of these Spanish colonial designs coming across the U.S. and Latin America.
Perfect. Let's take a quick break. When we come back in the second half, we've got more temple news. Can you believe it? More temple news than this. It's what happens. We'll come back and do that in the second half. Here in the second half of the Temple Ticker, don't forget that Corey, he slaves over all this stuff, including, you've heard him mention the street views. You want to see links to all of the things that we're talking about, you can check it out in the show notes. Many active links for you to be able to click through. If you're like, well, what does that granite that's carved look like? Click, find it. You can see the renderings and the pictures there. So now we go to some groundbreakings.
Yeah, this was announced a month ago. So we're just barely getting to this. It will be just around the corner. The Knoxville, Tennessee temple will have a groundbreaking January 27th, and Shane and Bowman will be the presiding authority.
A new MTC was an interesting announcement. I didn't know. It seemed like we were in the era of less MTCs, but we're like, no, let's do another one.
Yeah, certainly. The church has closed, I think, 4, maybe 5 MTCs in the last 5 years. So this is an interesting pattern, a new thing that will be happening. That I think you touched on it, but the Thailand MTC will be located next to the new 6-story Thailand Bangkok temple. And the church website says that the languages that will be taught there are Thai, English, and Russian. So probably missionaries that are from Thailand, maybe going to Thailand from other places, will be here. And then interestingly, Russian. And so currently, like, Russian's taught like at Provo or in England, but right now, obviously, there's not a ton of missionary work going on in Russia. But I think of the little that is happening, it's probably of native Russians doing it in their homeland. And so Thailand has actually remained kind of neutral in the Ukraine-Russia conflict. And so I think it's easy for Russians to travel to Thailand. And so I think this is what the church's calculus is, that anyone that may be coming from Russia can easily go to Thailand.
Okay. Okay, I like that. I support that. They don't get to go on missions to Russia, though. They're what, volunteers? Is that what they're called there?
I guess technically, yeah.
Yeah, if there are even anyone there, right?
I think, yeah, because they basically closed the 5 missions down to 2. I think the mission president is the same one for both of them. So there's basically only one mission right now and probably very few missionaries.
And all the mission consists of, "Hello, I am Elder from." It's terrible. Forgive me, everybody. Forgive me. Let's move on. Now, this was interesting because as I was looking over your notes, you said Salt Lake Temple and Temple Square. So I went, go on.
Yeah, the church has announced that some new areas of Temple Square will be opening and closing in the month of January and February. Already open is the full plaza in front of the church office building. They had that partially open during Christmas when you could see the lights. They had some nativity displays up, but now that full thing will be opened, and they'll be starting to open up the Main Street Plaza, which is right in front of the Salt Lake Temple. It has that big reflecting pool that will start to be opened in fully in February. And then the place that was where that North Visitor Center was located, where the Space Jesus was. They've now finished the grounds there and the new restroom building, so that will be open now. And then what would be closing is the Assembly Hall, which is the south part of the tabernacle, which they said they'll have limited renovations of the Assembly Hall just to update a few things. But yeah, what's also interesting is that they said that they'll start to fly the country flags at the church office building. There'll be 91 flagpoles, one for the United States, and then 91. They'll rotate the flags between countries that are recognized by the UN, and they'll be placed in alphabetical order, rotated every 3 months. And so what's important about this to note is that they're flying all the countries' flags. They're not flying all the flags where the church has presence or missionaries. So if you see a flag from a country that the church doesn't have missionaries, don't go thinking that there's some conspiracy or that it's secretly happening. There's missionary work in China or whatever. I worked at the.
We're just not allowed to talk about it. A friend of mine in another ward, he got a mission call, and where it said where he's going to be called to serve, there was a phone number.
Oh yeah.
Called it. Stupid. Sorry.
Once I was going to general conference and someone's like, "Hey, I heard that they put up the Chinese flag at the MTC." And I'm like, "Well, I work at the MTC as a custodian, and we take down those flags every day at the end of the day. And I tell you that we have the Chinese flag there for a long time because we've had missionaries in Hong Kong for a long time, and so that's why it's there."
Yeah. You're like, please, old news. Come on. Now, you have a little bit of a bonus story, but before we get to that, I just want to mention, so if you find yourself in downtown Salt Lake, it's significant to know that there is a clean place that you can use the restroom now because the restroom building on Temple Square is now open. So if you're shopping at the City Creek Center and you're like, I have to go up the escalator and then down the thing and all that. Nope. There's another option for using the restroom. It's over on Temple Square. Please tell me about the bonus story.
Well, a few months or about a year ago, we talked about the leaked plans that were put out for Temple Square that basically were an internal study that the church conducted to look at what could be the future of Temple Square. How could we improve the visitor's experience? And among the big things it proposed is demolish most of the buildings near the temple, like the Joseph Smith Memorial Building, the church office building, and then have a huge green space, and then rebuild the church offices just west of the temple. And so the Salt Lake Tribune did confirm from the church that those are authentic, that they were in the study process, but they have since been shelved, and they're rethinking everything right now.
It seems hard to me, from a historical point of view, that they would take down the Joseph Smith Memorial Building. It's the old Hotel Utah. I
agree
that. I understand the knocking it down to have the green space, etc. But that seems like that would that more than like the Manti Temple, or at least on the same level as the Manti Temple, we'd be like, what are we doing? This is hundreds of years of history. Let us please leave these things rather than, demolish and, we put a floral garden.
And I think that idea went out in the end, so that's why it was shelved.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Well,
But
good.
there's still
I'm glad we
elements
got
that
that
could happen.
confirmation.
Still elements of that plan that could happen in the future. There's that parking lot by the Delta Center that the church still owns that, they could build something there in the future. So we'll see.
Okay. So we go to Nicaragua.
Yeah, the local media covered the construction progress of the temple there. They had about a 10-minute segment just talking about the temple. They interviewed, I think, a councilwoman from the city and some representatives from the church, and they're just talking about what the temple is and what it means. They just emphasized that now members of the church in Nicaragua won't have to travel to other countries to go to the temple. They said it's expected to be finished in 2025. And they said, like, we're building this to last 200 years. So we'll see if hopefully they don't need a renovation until 200 years from now.
And everyone said, why? What happens in 200 years? I heard that that's when the second coming is. So put on your calendar right now. It's 200 years. All that garbage that do.
We'll see. So yeah, it's just interesting that, Nicaragua doesn't have really great relationships with the United States right now. So it's just interesting that the church was able to find all the processes to build this temple. So
yeah. And then we bring it home to the United States, where there is trouble aplenty for temples.
At least two of them. In Heber Valley, there is a group that is trying to gather signatures to put the temple on a ballot initiative that will overturn this council's decision to approve the temple. They need 3,200 signatures in 40 days, and I think that's about half over. So I don't know what the progress is on that, so we'll have to see.
If you want to hear more about specifically the Heber Valley Temple, it's episode 740 of the Cultural Hall, where we talk to a guy in the city of Heber Valley talking about where they're at and what they've tried to do and what they haven't done and what blah, 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 blah. It's a whole episode about the Heber Valley Temple, so check that one out. And then we still have troubles in Cody.
Yeah, we just talked about that lawsuit that was happening, that there was a bunch of emails that were late to be put into the evidence pool, and the judge actually denied that those should enter the lawsuit. He says that they're not required to further their argument based on the legal test that he's looking at. So yeah, those won't be in there. So just
I like the idea of the judge, like that they printed out all of those emails and that the judge just sits behind the thing and just get these out of here. Just a big litter of torn up emails and text.
So, obviously they were still looked at. Like he obviously looked at them to see if they were going to further their argument. He said they're not going to further the argument at all. So
yeah. Now you said that there's trouble for only two temples. I would say that the trouble for the Provo, Utah temple is trouble as well, but a different kind of trouble.
Yeah, there was a man that was probably having mental problems that smashed some of the windows and the doors of the Provo Utah temple. So I definitely saw a lot of jokes about, it's just getting a head start on things.
Sure.
The temple's scheduled to close on February 24th. It looks like they're already putting out construction material all along the grounds of the temple. It's going to happen. The plans show that they're going to demolish the temple and then build a new one, basically a few feet in front of the current one. The Salt Lake Tribune did write about a group that they've been trying to save the temple for 2 years now, but they just kind of fell on deaf ears and haven't said anything. So
spoiler, they didn't stop it. The question I have, you live down around that way. Did they replace the stuff that was broken by the guy trying to get in?
I actually live in Salt Lake City now, but
oh shoot, you hang out down around there, don't you?
Not much anymore.
You know someone down there, don't you?
Sure.
Okay, listen, here's the call out. Contact@theculturalhall.com. There's got to be someone in Provo. Did they fix the things that this guy broke, or did they look at it and go, listen, this makes no sense to fix this for 2 months' time. Let's put a nice piece of cardboard in the place and then do it. It's an interesting, when we consider them to be houses of the Lord, we want it to be the finest, we want it to be the greatest, all those things. I recognize that. But is there at some point where you look at it and go, yeah, but we're about to smash all this stuff? I'd be curious to know. Contact at theculturalhall.com.
Yeah. Last time we talked about all the temples that had Christmas celebrations, and the church news left off 2 of them, which is Mexico City and Idaho Falls. So it's kind of too late now to see those, but just to know in the future, those temples also do have Christmas celebrations that happen.
Yeah, don't forget Mexico City and Idaho Falls, church news. Let's do a year in review. This is a looking backwards and a looking forwards.
Yeah, so there was 11 temple dedications in 2023, and then 2 rededications. So this is a high point. I think it's the most since President Hinckley's temple boom, when there was 34 temples dedicated in 2000. So yeah, we're building up to more temple dedications each year, it looks like. The church news had a headline like that there was 8 temple groundbreakings, which they say is, down for the church. There's the other temples before, the other years before this, there was 21.
Jeez.
And then 16, and that was during COVID. And so I think things have maybe caught up a little bit. But they note that, there's like right now, like 80 temples waiting to be have a groundbreaking. So maybe more will happen in the future.
Well,
and then temple and
you said maybe more will happen in the future. Of course they will. Otherwise, we're
okay,
going to have a temple.
I meant maybe more will happen next year.
Oh yeah, of course.
Or this
Come
year,
on,
2024.
come on, bring it 2024. Let's do it.
And then 35 temples were announced in 2023, which is the exact same as 2022. So 70 temples announced in the last 2 years.
Now, a quick aside, I made this mention in our last articles of news where I said, we now have 450 missions for the church. And we, actually, you have said that the church, not officially, has said that we'll have 500 temples by the year 2030. Are we doing 500 missions and 500 temples by 2030? Is that the thing?
I mean, missions go up and down. Who knows with missions?
Come on,
I think it just
join,
depends.
speculate, yes or no. Give me your word.
Why not? Why not?
Okay, I'll take it too. So what are we thinking as we look towards 2024? It will be, for all intents as I can see, a record-breaking year.
Yeah, I think we'll probably beat 2023. So far, there's 6 dedications scheduled and 1 rededication scheduled in Manti. And then from the looks of things, there's about 13 temples that are nearing completion. And so we could have 19, maybe 20 temples dedicated in 2024. And then looking for the future, you might have another 14 or so for 2025, and maybe 20 or more in 2026, depending on how many groundbreakings happen in the next little while. And then 3 temples have dedications scheduled that will close this year. That's Provo, Anchorage, Alaska, and I think New York City is the other one.
Those are those renovations. Let me ask you this just real quick about that. With the 13 nearing completion and the 6 dedications already scheduled, so we know that number 200 will more than likely happen in 2024.
That's from the looks, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
So it's a race to see.
Come on,
now,
Taylorsville.
Taylorsville, maybe Salvador, Brazil now is another candidate. Pittsburgh maybe, so we'll see. It's up in the air what temple will be the 200th.
And then the temple sites announced.
Yeah, so just like in the waiting, we have almost exactly the exact number. We have 48 temples that have sites announced that could theoretically have groundbreakings in the next while, and then another 48 temples that are awaiting a site announcement. So that's about 96 temples that could be starting in the next little while. So
we get that temple news typically on Monday afternoon. So if you can't wait for the temple ticker, you can certainly wait for that church news, and that's typically when that stuff has come out. But it's by all intents and purposes, there should be temple news every week when you're looking for 96 temples as far as either groundbreakings announced or a site announcement or a dedication coming up, or they print the dedicatory prayer of every single temple, so that will be there as well. Temple news every week. That's exciting.
Yep.
You throw in one last bonus. What's this about?
Okay, this was my personal project. In the month of December, there was a new apostle announced, Patrick Huron. And I was curious just to see, like, his name was probably the most common I heard bandied around before that. So I'm like, why was it so common? Why did everyone think it was him? And so what I decided to do is to look at the characteristics of apostles when they're called and kind of see their position and things. I ran some stats. Basically, the average age of a new apostle was 61.54.
Okay.
And Elder Keon was 62.3 years old. And so I'm like, that's pretty close to the average.
Okay.
And then I also looked at things like how long had they been serving in the 70, which Elder Keon had been serving there for like 10 years. And then, you know, he's from outside the United States, and currently that's kind of a trend. It seems like no apostles have been born outside the United States. And they also, something like 9 out of the 11 last apostles have come from the presidency of the 70. And Elder Kieran was the president of the presidency of the 70. And so basically I took all those details, assigned them a score about how close they were to the average age, how long they've been in, if they're in the 70 or the bishopric, and then if they were born outside the United States. And I gave everyone a score based on that, and I saw where Patrick Huron basically landed, and he was number 3. He got the third highest score of the current 70s. And the only ones that got higher ones were Carlos Godoy and Jose Teixeira. They're from Brazil and Portugal, which is almost exactly like Elder Suarez. So maybe if you wanted something a little bit different, Elder Kieran was there in number 3 position. So just interesting to see if you could use numbers to predict new apostles. So in the future, I'll be curious to see, you know, who goes in. It's kind of like picking a Supreme Court nominee. They have to have, you know, the exact amount of years in the court, and they have to be some age so that they last a long time. And yeah, just interesting.
Now, I got a question for you, because with Elder Kieran being called to be an apostle, that leaves an opening in the presidency. Any idea who will be called to the presidency of the 70? Do you have any sort of speculation there?
Well, it's kind of been just like in Supreme Court, the DC circuit is kind of where a lot of the judges come from. The presidency of the 70 is kind of where most of the apostles come from. And so it will be curious to see who is in there come this next conference. And it's very possible that the next person could be a candidate for the apostleship. And so one I was thinking is Elder Tay. He's a Filipino, 70. He's been in there a long time. He's really young. Maybe other ones
he
like...
is my pick for an apostle as well.
Yeah,
really, I expect so. As we've talked about how in the next couple of years it's likely 3 or 4 apostles will pass. My suspicion is that they'll call him to be in the presidency and then subsequently call him to be an apostle, just because, I mean, you think about the massive amounts of people that are, I know, listen, God calls who, or qualifies who he calls. I get it, everyone. We're talking from speculation purposes, but there is so much representation in the church from the Philippines, and he is a gentleman who is young, who has got a lot of experience, who, if he's called to the presidency, has that opportunity, and then it just seems like a natural fit for him to then move into an apostleship in a couple of years.
And one thing I've been thinking is that Elder Ahmed Corbett, I think he's kind of like an Oaks protege. He reminds me, his rhetoric and everything reminds me a lot about Elder Oaks. And he was recently called as a 70. And if he's put there in the presidency of the 70, that would really, I think in my spreadsheet would help his score out and put him up there. So he's another one to look out for.
This is definitely something to check out. If people are into this kind of thing, link in the show notes to be able to check out, because, you know, a lot of people have said, well, Elder Paul Johnson may be a great one, but you look at his age and you sort of go, Well, I mean, and again, everyone we know, God calls who he wants. Got it. But if you're looking at sort of these, statistics that you see commonly take place within, you sort of think, oh, yeah, maybe he's missed his window and he wouldn't be the next one. So you start to look
So
at some of these younger folks and go, oh, okay, maybe here we go. Maybe that's someone we'll hear from.
the oldest apostle that has been called in the last 20 years is Elder Cook. He was 67. So basically anyone that's over 67, I kind of like discounted. And I said,
Sure.
they're going to be released soon. They're probably not in that window anymore. Although it could always happen. So
I don't know that you know this, but it's worth the asking of the question. Elder Tai,
uh,
where is he from? Where does he? Do you know where he's coming? Where he comes
if you go on the spreadsheet, you scroll over to the birthplace and it shows.
Oh, look at you already thought about
I
it.
think he's the one. He's the one that was just in the Taiwan temple groundbreaking, right?
Yeah. Okay. So he's from Hong Kong. He's a young gentleman, 51. Mutombo, born in 76, is okay. I like this. This is exciting.
Yeah, I put them in red if they're either younger than Elder Bednar or older than Elder Cook. And so Elder Motombo, he's only 47 right now. If once he ages into that range, he's definitely going to be up there.
That's incredible. Go check out that.
There's probably 3 or 4 young African 70s that have been called in the last few years, and so they're definitely people to look at.
All right, so I want to put you on the spot. You have to pick one. One of the apostles passes today. Who are you saying the next one is?
I would say either, like I said, Elder Tay or Elder Corbett, but also maybe Gerald Causse. I think he's, I think just these people that are associated with the apostles a lot, the people in the 70, the people in the bishopric that are hanging out a lot with the apostles. I think they're most likely to be called, and so
yeah,
anyone in that upper part of leadership, I think just if they spend a lot of time with the apostles, I think they have a greater likelihood to receive inspiration for these people.
Interesting. See, and for me, if I'm picking how this goes next, this is how I feel like it goes. I feel like you go Godoy. Then I feel like you have one that everyone will complain about, where it's some guy from Utah, you know what I'm saying, or some like Western United States guy, and we all go, "What? You had the opportunity." That kind of thing. That I feel like is the next pick after that, and then I think you get into like a Dubé or a Tay or someone that would represent that arm of the church. That's sort of my feeling. So I'm going Godoy. And to you, I say, Godoy to you too, sir.
Yeah, so take a look at my spreadsheet. If you think that I can change my formula at all, I would be love to hear if there's any smart people out there that are actuaries or whatever. I would love to know how I can improve this.
It's awesome. It's so much work, and I think it's so rad that you did it. Check it out in the show notes associated with this episode. You guys, that's it. That's the end. We hope that this episode has nourished and strengthened your body.
We hope that if you're sick or otherwise afflicted, that you'll be able to hear me next week. Yes, I forgot to end it.
And that when the time comes, you will be able to travel home in safety. In the meantime, we'll be saving a seat for you
on the back row
of the cultural
hall.